Okay, I'm on. Good. When Miles asked who here currently works in enterprise UX, I'm so glad not everyone put their hand up, otherwise the next 30 minutes would be a complete waste of time. My talk, B2B versus B2C products. Let's get going. So around 60% of roles for product design on LinkedIn are for B2B or B2B2C. And when I realized that, I was really surprised because when I started designing, it was all about the consumer apps. It was all about the media apps like iPlayer and YouTube and the e-commerce sites, right, like Amazon, eBay, or the fashion sites like Burberry, Farfetch, that kind of thing. But I think the tide is changing. I think the landscape is changing, and I think enterprise UX is now the place to be. I don't think anyone expected anyone to say enterprise UX is hot right now, right? But I think it is changing. But before I go on, let me talk about me and who I am and why I'm talking today. So I am a senior product designer at Goodlord, and Goodlord is a company that makes rental software for letting agents to use. So if you've rented anywhere in the UK over the last few years, you may have used their software to submit your references, and then there's someone on the back end using various dashboards to manage your referencing. But they also do other stuff like helping people with the inventory and helping people move out and move into the next place. So there's sort of the full life cycle of renting. I myself have been designing apps for about 16 years, and I've worked across both B2C and B2B, including enterprise software. So I like to think that I have a pretty good perspective across both, but let's find out if that's actually the case in the next few slides. So what is enterprise UX? So this is how I would define it, as designing tools that help organizations go faster and make better decisions. And that includes productivity, data management, collaboration, and communication. So let's take a look at some of the more commonly known enterprise tools. So we have Office, which is like the OG enterprise software that most people have used at some point. Jira for project management, Salesforce is a customer relationship management tool, Mixpanel for tracking your website, making sure that your sales aren't tanking. Communication category, we've got Teams and Slack, everyone knows what they are. Dropbox, I don't know actually anyone that uses Dropbox anymore, but I still thought I'd throw this example in there for sort of collaboration, and Miro, of course, is for collaborating remotely. And they sort of kind of fit in these categories, but it's not that black and white. There is a lot of crossover as well between the sections, but that's where they broadly sit. And let's take a look at some enterprise UI next, right? This is the fun stuff. So Miro, which I just talked about, very great tool for collaborating online. You're basically sharing loads and loads of Post-it notes everywhere. And what is great about Miro is just being able to work anywhere and collaborate sort of with people with designs and everything, all that stuff. Toolbars is what it does particularly well, I feel. And toolbars are synonymous with enterprise software. They are basically lists of icons, tons and tons of icons in bars, either horizontally or vertically, that you can move around. You'll find them in tools like Photoshop as well. And they allow really advanced users to access a lot of different sort of features very, very quickly. So this is an advanced user kind of design pattern, really, because you kind of have to remember what all the icons mean. It's not the sort of tool you use once. PowerPoint, one of the original enterprise software. Panels is what PowerPoint is a really good example of. So you don't think about these things, but next time you use any sort of creation tool, you'll see it typically has panels on the left-hand side and the right-hand side to edit whatever you're doing, and that is a very common design pattern. And you also have ribbons, and ribbons are basically toolbars that are like bigger, with bigger icons and labels. They're like more easier to use toolbars, basically. Jira, everyone loves Jira, right? Project management, great example of columns and cards. Dragging and dropping is also a really common thing in enterprise software. And in this case, you're dragging and dropping cards around to try and organize things. Trello is another example of that, dragging and dropping cards. And dashboards. So in enterprise software, you can't move for dashboards, right? And this is Power BI, and this basically summarizes all the key information for different types of people. So if you're on sales and marketing, you'll get all your sales and marketing data there. And it's visualizing the data. It's trying to make sense of the data, right? That is a big part of enterprise software and business intelligence software. This is Goodlord, I believe. And this is an example of a customer service dashboard, giving you a quick snapshot on how well customer service is doing in general. And menus, we have to talk about menus. So when you're using enterprise software, you take these for granted, right? But there's so many different types of menus, and someone had to design all of those. Someone had to think about what each menu item is called, the order, the grouping, where they appear, and it is a nightmare, actually. It's really laborious. It's not a particularly interesting thing to do, but it has to be done because it's all about trying to cram as many features into your UI as possible. Unlike consumer apps, where you're typically trying to keep things to a minimum to simplify things, if you simplify things too much with enterprise software, you end up making things worse and actually more difficult and start restricting people. So you have to find ways to basically hide all these features, but still make them easily accessible. Keyboard shortcuts are also another massive part of enterprise software, because if you think about it, if you're using a piece of software day in, day out, and you're doing a really repetitive task, constantly moving that mouse, that's actually really slow. And you can make it efficient by using keyboard shortcuts, which means that people don't get RSI in their shoulder and things like that as well. So these are all things you don't typically think about with consumer software. But actually, on that point, let's look at some B2C to sort of remind ourselves what we typically are supposed to be designing as like UX designers. So this is Marks & Spencer's sort of navigation, and as you can see, you've got the main categories and you've got the subcategories, but then you've also got the promotions on the right-hand side as well. And why are you distracting someone from finding what they're trying to look for? Because you're trying to sell. The difference between B2C and B2C in this respect is if the person that's looking on your site finds what they want, yeah, that's great, but it's not that important. The important thing is they're spending as much money as possible, so you can get away with like distracting them with like ads while they're trying to do something else. Filters and promotions also feature on results pages of e-commerce websites. I think this is AO. And filters are going to be probably the most complicated control that your users are going to encounter on a B2C website. This is Joseph Joseph's homepage. So Joseph Joseph is a homeware brand. And why I picked this as an example is it shows the sort of minimalism that a lot of B2C websites will have. It's literally just, you know, a video background with one button in the middle, minimal sort of top-level navigation, right? And they're trying to sell a lifestyle. They're trying to sort of put a lifestyle in people's heads, right? COS is another example of that. So they think, well, they want to put that psychology into your head. They want you to think that if you buy COS, you will be living in luxurious villas, just like this guy, right? That's what they're trying to build a picture of a new life for you. This is Firebox, I think. So an example of lots of imagery used in the product cards. And we've got some apps here. So we've got the Nando's app, we've got the Deliveroo, and we've got Spotify. Now, with Nando's, you've got the fun language, hungry, let's go. Lots of imagery, lots of color. You know, all about the promotions here for Deliveroo and personalization for Spotify as well. You know, party time, all that kind of thing. It's all about fun. So B2C apps are typically about this. They're about aesthetics, they're about psychology, they're about promotions and entertainment. If you think about it, when you're designing for B2C, it's kind of like half marketing, right? Yes, you're there to solve problems. You're there to help people find things and do things. But you're also there to sell and distract and keep people on there as long as possible. It's a different way of designing to enterprise. Because also you've got to remember that if you did try and do any of this to B2B users, it's a waste of time because they don't have the power to buy anything anyway. And who would spend their own money on enterprise software, right? So it is very different. When you compare it with B2B tools, it's about neutral UIs. You're very lucky to get anything other than white, grey, and blue, right, on your UI. And if you put loads of UIs of enterprise software together, sometimes it can be hard to tell which belongs to which brand. Efficiency is obviously a very key factor in enterprise software as are meeting goals and targets and repetition. Like what I was saying earlier, you are designing for someone to use your software for many hours of the day and getting as many tasks done as possible, which is often the polar opposite of when you're designing for consumer stuff. Another example actually is if you imagine like an insurance website, you might buy insurance once a year, and then that's it, and then you won't see that website again for a year. Compare that with B2B software, you're using the software 7.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's why it's designed for completely the same task, all day, every day. Design success metrics are also different between B2C and B2B. So in B2C, it's typically about making the numbers go up, and in B2B, it's about making the numbers go down. And what I mean by that is things like conversion rates, you want to go up, sales, you want to go up, usage time, you want to go up, and brand recognition. With B2B tools, task completion times, staff headcount, training time, and operational costs are all things you want to reduce. Now, I know all businesses all want to make the money go up, I get that, but as designers, the way we go about that is different, depending on whether you're designing for B2C or B2B. So first of all, I want to apologize for the following AI images that are coming up. AI thinks that everyone lives in penthouse apartments with mountains in the background, and they're always smiling really eerily as well. So this is the best I could do. I'm not going to do trial and error for more than half an hour. Right, so B2C apps users we can relate to, typically. We picture them at home, on the sofa, or on the way to work, or trying to catch a bus or a train and buying their train ticket. We can relate to them, and we only need to focus on them, really. Yes, we need to worry about the business, but we when it comes to who you're designing for, who's going to be using it, you're focused on the end users here, right? Using it in their leisure time. But with B2B, you have customers and end users. Now, a lot of people get upset when you use the word users, right? I mean, I don't care. I think it's an easy way to differentiate between customers and the people that are actually using the software. So yeah, the customers are the people that are actually buying it, and the end users are the people that are actually using it. Okay, so these people are the decision makers, and these people just want to use it so they can get on with their job and go home at the end of the day. But they also have very different priorities in a lot of respects, and even though you've got a design for both of them, which is quite a challenge, right? Because the customer's priorities are staff productivity, headcount, staff onboarding times, and profit margins. On the other side of the coin, for end users, it's going home on time, job security, value in the job market, and job satisfaction. And it can be quite difficult trying to design the software so that it keeps both happy, because they have conflicting goals, right? Customer wants to reduce headcount, or at least not increase it, and the end user wants to keep their job. So how do you deal with this? You try and look for the overlaps. So here, we've got the task completion speed, which would help with the going home on time, and the staff productivity, meeting targets. Is going to help with job security and profit margins, and minimizing mistakes is also going to help with profit margins and job satisfaction, right? If your software is constantly making you make mistakes, then that's obviously going to be quite a depressing job to be in. So, time for reality check. Utility trumps usability, trumps aesthetics. Now, a lot of you will be looking at me thinking, well, yeah, obviously, Gareth, that's Design 101. But actually, in many circumstances, or many different types of companies, like high-end fashion brands, aesthetics is actually more important than usability. They would much rather that they adhere to their brand guidelines than make it easy to use for everybody on their website. But in enterprise software, aesthetics is right down the bottom in my experience in priorities. That's not to say it's not important, and that is going to be your differentiator against your competitors. If you're not the only person doing what you do, then the aesthetics will give you a level up. But it is typically kind of really low down in priorities compared to with consumer apps. And here is a great example of this. So this is a tool that is owned by the company I work for, Goodlord. So they own a company called Vouch. And if you were a designer looking at this, you would think, whoa, what's going on here? This is like really, really busy UI. It's really noisy. And it's sort of what do you click on? Like how does it actually work? It's not immediately obvious. This is definitely something you're going to have to learn. And this is the slide out that comes out when you want to click on a user. So this is, I don't think I explained this very well. So the whole point of this is to manage tenancies. So when someone applies for a flat, then this software is used to manage the application and make sure that the people moving in are the people that they want to move in. And again, so there's very little kind of design patterns that are being followed here on the right, here on the right-hand side. But what you need to realize is that this was designed by letting agents with no design background. They were just letting agents. And they did this, they put all this together themselves. And I've never heard so much positive feedback from customers for this tool. This is loved, absolutely loved by the customers of Vouch. They're like, don't touch it, it's brilliant, we love it. And that's because Vouch have nailed utility. Utility, is king in enterprise software. Doesn't mean it can't be better, and one of my jobs is going to be trying to make this even better than it already is. But it just goes to show that it's not, as long as you're solving a problem, that you start from there and then you work backwards. So next I want to talk about the fact that when you start working in a new industry, you know literally nothing about anything. Unless you're a doctor that's decided to become a UX designer and work for a healthcare startup, then you don't know how things work. So user research, in my opinion, is more important for B2B than it is for B2C. Because with B2C, at least you can relate somewhat. If you're designing a shopping website or a clothing website, you'd go, okay, well, I know when I buy clothes on a website, I want to know what the sizes are. I want to know sort of what the returns policy is, that kind of thing. But B2B, you don't know anything. So it's a lot more risky not doing research. You should do research at B2C, of course, but there's a lot more at stake with B2B, especially with safety-critical software as well. So I want to show an example of that. So this is something that I was told to redesign a few years ago. This software is for lawyers to compare documents. So designing document comparison software, fun, right? And what I was tasked to basically increase the usability of this. So this is for selecting the current document and the change document, and you compare the changes, and it's used by lawyers and that kind of thing. And I thought, yeah, I can jazz this up. I can make it easier to use. Like, how hard can that be? So I add drag and drop features. I put a browse button on there to sort of a big browse button to easily select, easier to access comparison settings. I put a thumbnail there to show a preview of the document. I thought, yeah, this is great. Let's user test this. And it turns out it's actually completely useless because I hadn't looked at the workflow. The workflow is so important. Just like customer journeys are with B2C, workflows are really important in B2B. It's completely useless because in reality, they don't pick files like normal people. They go into File Explorer in Windows and they copy the file paths from the Windows and they copy and paste that file path and paste it into the text boxes. That's how they do that. And they also really like to access recently compared documents by using the drop-down to access the recently compared documents. I didn't realize that, so I took both of those features out. They also didn't need the document preview. They said that's useless. So basically we had to roll it all back and get to how it was before because we just gave up on that, I think. Anyway, so here's some more quick enterprise UX research tips. So if anyone that wants to go into enterprise or is about to, you want to ask for customer introductions from account managers and product managers. They will have access to your customers. So you want to definitely make friends with them. You want to shadow customer success staff on training calls. So that's a really good thing when you don't know the software you're designing for. You get free training by shadowing, and you also get to listen to questions being asked by the people getting the training. And if the same questions keep being asked, then you think, okay, maybe it's not that intuitive, especially if a trainer is teaching them how to use it and they still don't understand. Tech support staff are great for sort of listening to the customer pain points. So shadowing tech support calls are also a very good thing to do as well. you can get free customer and user insights from business development managers who will tell you what the customers care about. So the business development managers who are on sales calls, they know what makes customers actually buy it. So they should know what is a priority for the customers. The tech support managers and employees, they know what users complain about the most, so you'll get that perspective from them. Because typical ways of getting suitable research participants in B2C is like using tools like user testing and Maze. They give you a panel. People for Research is an example of a recruitment agency, like a participant recruitment agency. But if you try and find really rare professions using these tools, it can get quite expensive. So I would recommend building up your own list of willing participants, and it's more about building relationships rather than sort of transactional sort of ways of working with a consumer participants. So yeah, how would you get 30 minutes of a lawyer's time for user testing who normally bill £300 an hour? So you just give them fancy cupcakes, right, which are about 20 quid a box or something. And it's because when you're dealing with business research participants, it's more about relationships. It's more about just, here's a thank you. It's not an incentive, it's just a little thank you for your time. And another great thing about this, if you go to the office of the lawyers or whoever, is they will go back to their desk with those cupcakes, and then their envious colleagues will say, oh, where'd you get those cupcakes? Oh, they're doing user testing in that room over there. If you go, you get cupcakes as well. And then they come because they don't want to miss out on the cupcakes, right? So you can be creative with your incentives because it's not monetary. If you offer a 50 quid Amazon voucher to a lawyer, they'll laugh in your face. Anyway, so for remote workers, you can do this as well. You can also send cookies and brownies. I'm doing a lot of advertising for Lola's, I've realized. It wasn't my intention, but so there are ways around it, whether it's in person or remote. So I'm going to finally finish on this. So why enterprise UX and why now? So until the last sort of 2 or 3 years, it's all, 2D, let me start again. 2D consumer website and app design patterns have basically been figured out. So this is my opinion, by the way. That's not to say there's not more innovation to be done, but this is actually what businesses think. They kind of think, e-commerce websites have kind of stayed the same for the last 10 years. And now they're happy to just have their small design teams and just tweak them slightly. And then if you are a new business that's going to start selling something new, you're more likely to either just to use Amazon or Shopify, right? So and then all the already established companies, they've got their website and they're pretty happy with it. They're happy with just changing, the label here and just, optimizing bit by bit. And that's no fun for a designer anyway. But as enterprise, there is a limitless number of bespoke, complex problems to solve and UIs to bring in 2024. So you've got a combination of really old UIs to refresh, like the one you saw earlier, and also businesses that have got their own unique things. So 101 of business is do something different to your competitors. Why start a new business? Because it's different. And that means that every business has its own problems. So it's not about copy and pasting designs from competitors. And also, it's a lot more difficult to see what your competitors are doing. So a business just can't go on, ASOS.com, or how do they do it? It's usually hidden behind lots of secure login walls. So designers are more valued, I think, today in the enterprise space, and a pure UX's value is far greater, as the success metrics are based on usability and utility. So if you're a designer that's not from a creative background, and you're maybe more technical background or whatever, or you're just not interested in sort of, what colors and fonts things are, then this could be somewhere that you could thrive and you'll actually have a lot more fun. And that's the end of my talk. So thanks very much. All right.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
Okay.
You're already putting your hands together for him, so I won't ask you to do that. But I will ask you if you have any questions. We've got a couple of minutes before the next talk. Any questions on the kind of introduction to enterprise UX?
Hi, I really enjoyed that. I also work for a company which I design enterprise software, and it's something I really find difficult having the product has already been purchased before the users come on, and B, we have so many different user personas who use the product. So as a designer, I find it really difficult to know when what we've designed is successful because the purchase has already been made, and who to design for because we've got so many different types of users. We're not designing for the person who has necessarily bought it. We're designing it for the people who use it, which can be spread across many different people. So my question is, how do you work around that?
So you do need to get access to the end users. It's like, I know I said earlier that you've got to make the customer happy, and that's what I think that's what product managers will focus on is they will focus on the features to make the customers happy, and the end users are sort of hopefully a pleased byproduct of that. But so I like to get access to the end users, and that can be more difficult. It's often more difficult to get access to the end users than the customers. So what I've done at Goodlord is they have a piece of software that's built into their web apps that allows them to put modal pop-ups for when people first sign in, and then you can put a pop-up that says, get £100 Amazon have a chance at winning a £100 Amazon voucher in return for filling out this survey that will only take like 5 minutes. And then, complete survey now, take them to a SurveyMonkey or whatever, and then you get access to the actual end users that are actually using it, and you can ask whatever questions you want, and you get that feedback. And then you can set up calls with, in the survey itself, you can say, if you're interested in an interview, let me know, like here, and you say, and they put their email address in, and then you've also got access to people that want to interview, as well as the answers via the survey as well. So that's how you get the insights from the end user, and you get also their opinions on the software as well, whether it's good or bad, things that they can improve, features they would like. So that's one way of getting the information from end users. And the end users will give feedback. If a piece of software is really bad, they're going to tell the people that actually bought it, don't buy this again, get something else, right? But so it's not all lost. It's still worth making the end users happy because I think that's it. Hopefully I've answered that.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We're going to hold any further questions for the Q&A panel later because we are keen to get onto our next speaker so that there's no extra time between you and food. So finally, put your hands together one more time for Gareth as he exits the stage. Thank you, Gareth.